to stay on the line as well once you finish recording?
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
can just do our...
Yeah, we'll chat a little bit after we're done and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Hey, thanks for joining. This is another episode of the Sales Vitamin Podcast. I've got a great episode for you today. We are talking with Simon Hares. He is the Serial Trainer 7 Managing Director. You know him on LinkedIn as that, and also as Simon Hares. And we've got him this morning all the way from the UK, folks. And you're going to have a lot of sales vitamins today. It's going to be a fantastic episode. So, Simon, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure. And hello to everyone out there watching.
Absolutely. Hey, before we get going here real quick, kind of give everybody just a quick update of what you're doing, where you're at, and the organization.
Yeah, sure. So I run a company called Serial Trainer 7. We specialize in sales and management development predominantly. And then all of the behaviors that kind of crisscross in between the two of them. So you have things like presentation skills and understanding behavior, creating sales proposals, dealing with objections, communication, that type of thing. So all of the good stuff that sits between management development and sales development, and predominantly it's all around sales. And we do that, I'd probably say, doing training courses in person. And obviously with COVID, that's now moved to a more virtual space, but we also do that in a kind of one-to-one coaching environment as well as in groups. And we work with large organizations and small organizations across the world. So we've worked with some quite lovely names, companies like Dickies, Workwear we've worked with the National Health Service here in the UK. So we've got some big names that we work with, and we help them through the development of their people, either in sales or in management.
Cool. And I noticed you do a lot of worldwide stuff. You're not just solely there in the UK. Where does the name Serial Trainer 7? That's kind of a unique name. Tell the listeners about that. Where did that come from? Is that just something you thought of, or there's got to be a history there?
Well, there's nothing to do with serial killers before we go into the kind of Dexter area of things. There's none of that. Although I do have a bit of fascination with serial killers and the way that they perform, because actually it's a way of understanding behavior. So, there's quite a lot of fascination in there, but that's too dark for here.
Yeah.
The Serial Trainer 7 side of things is all about the constant need to develop and train people. And as a salesperson, I love to train people. And in every role that I've ever held, I've always been the person that's been the buddy and the developer and the helper that people tag along, and you show them the way. So that's that constant serial development. The 7 is from Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Effective People. And the book had quite a profound effect on my life when I first read it. And the 7th habit was the one that resonated the most, which is always sharpen the axe or the knife, whichever way you want to look at it. Again, nothing to do with serial killers.
Yeah.
And that 7, that always sharpen the knife, always keep the axe sharp, is about keeping your skills really sharp and current and doing it. So that when I'm talking to clients, I can say to them that ultimately I am actually doing what I'm training. So it's not just somebody coming in who used to sell. I'm actually doing it every day. I feel the pain and the pleasure that salespeople feel every single day. And that makes me, rather than just different, it makes me relevant, so that when I go in to work with salespeople, they feel a kindred spirit. We're all kind of a group of brethren that work so hard together. And that's where the 7 really comes from.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a great book. I know that I can see from just the things you do online and your website that had a profound impact on your work.
Oh, yeah.
What do you see, talking about the sharpening the saw, what do you see in most of the organizations you work with from a sales development standpoint? Is that stressed, or is that an area where you have to really emphasize to the sales team about sharpening the saw and their sales skills?
Well, Larry Levine, I think, famously quoted that salespeople today have convinced themselves that what they're not doing doesn't work. And there's a bit of apathy sometimes when you go into very well-established sales teams where they've got used to doing things a certain way, they've got entrenched in certain habits, and they have forgotten some of the good things that they were taught years ago that really have stood the test of time. And when we go into the business, it's about making sure that those people are reminded of those particular skills and reminded that there are processes that are out there for a reason. And sales process is so important. We hear about people talking about empathy and leading with the heart and understanding people, which is all tremendously important. But ultimately within sales, you've got to have a kind of a sat nav, if you will. You've got to go into that conversation with your client, plug in those next steps as to where you want to get to, and then set your course for that destination. Now, the only way that you're going to get there is if you follow that direct route or that pathway. Of course, like a sat nav, when you're traveling somewhere, you can get off and go and have lunch in a little town. You might want to go and look at a monument somewhere on the way. But in order to get where you want to go, you've got to get back onto the route again. And what we do is to be able to remind people that there is a process, and that people do need to be reminded that there are certain touch points within those processes that will create the next steps within the customer's mind. Let me qualify that for a minute. When we're talking to sales, when we're talking to clients, we need to make sure we're spending a lot of time on the discovery phase. But it's really important for us to remember that when we're actually going through this interrogation, questioning of the client and their business, that the answers the client gives us, they are going to expect us to do something with them. So all the way through that discovery phase, the salesperson is trained to be thinking about the answers that the client is giving you, so that they can then take those answers and calibrate them to the answers they're going to give to the solutions they're going to offer, so that everything is joined up, so that they don't do the classic, turn up and throw up routine where they're just going to sit in front of a client and say, this is what we do. We've got this many people. We reach that many buyers. We do this, we do that, which is just a load of verbal rubbish.
Right.
What we're doing is we're training them to think about the next steps of the process. So when you're questioning, think about what you're going to do with it. And that's where we're seeing quite a lot of, stress, if you will, to use your word, within the sales process right now, because people are not necessarily spending enough time in that discovery phase. And then for those that are, they're still not adding true benefits and value. They're still kind of doing that old routine where it's just feature. And 101 training tells us that features tell and benefits sell. So we always have to be reminded of that.
Now, one of the things that I saw on your website that was pretty cool was you call all your courses journeys.
Yeah, we do.
Talk about that so the listeners kind of know, what is that? Is that how you approach your training method, whether it be on the sales or the leadership and development side?
It's about ultimately the progress and process that people go through when they learn how to do a certain role. And one of the things that I do with everyone I train is that once we've delivered training to them and we've met everybody, we jokingly say to them that they are stuck with me for life, for as long as they've got breath in their lungs. And part of that journey involves them being able to get in contact with myself at any time, wherever they work, should they need somebody to be able to talk to impartially, to run by a problem or a query, or maybe they've got something going on with a client where they can say, Simon, I've just got a proposal that I've put together. Is there any chance you can just sense check that for me? Or I'm dealing with a particular objection right now that I can't get over. How would you deal with that? What pointers could you give me? Now, knowing that as a delegate and an employee of an organization, that you've got that resource for you, means that I'm not a trainer that's just going to turn up and disappear after the training. They are stuck with me. And I always say they must assume the answer is always yes. And a number of people over this last 6 years of running the business stay in touch, and some of them have moved through different businesses, and they stay in touch and they continue their journey. And so we call the initial training the start of that journey, so that they've always got me, in their back pocket, if you will. And that's a nice thing for people to have. Traditionally, companies charge for that. I don't charge for that. I want them to be able to come back to ask for help. And it comes from an ethos I was taught many years ago by a mentor to me, who said that when you go through life, you should always try and leave an echo with people, because echoes always come back. So leave something in someone's mind so that they feel that you're always there, that you're not going to go away, and that they're free to come back. You can use other analogies like a boomerang or what have you.
Right.
But I've always used the word echo. And the funny thing is, when you try to do good things for people and always give more than you will ever receive, those people will come back. And that's quite a sustainable foundation for a really good business.
Absolutely. And I think that, a lot of the people I've talked to from a stickiness factor, it would
That's
be
a
real
good
easy.
word.
It would really be real easy to say, hey, Simon, come train our people. And you come and do your thing for a week or a month or whatever that time frame is, a day, whatever that is.
Yeah.
But then they don't hear from you again. There's no follow up. Because for it to stick, I think there has to be that 6 month, the 12 month, the 18 month that you have to be involved. You're kind of
Yeah.
plugged into their organization for a little while.
Yeah, you've got to have that connection with the business so that they do, get more from it. Because when you're actually doing a training event, people are not going to take in everything that you tell them, or you teach them, or you show them, or they have a go at. So we've got to make that stickiness happen a lot more. And I find that one of the best ways to do that is to get people playing. People learn best when they play.
Right.
And as trainers, we're trained, to understand the different learning styles that are out there, the doers, the thinkers, the reflectors, all of those things. But one thing we all have in common is we love to play with stuff. We love to tinker around and not feel in any way that we're going to be told we're wrong, or feel that we're in a situation that's not safe or comfortable. So what we do is we try to create a really safe place for people to learn. And that way, people tend to be more engaged. And then when they start coming back to us afterwards and talking to us further about their needs and how we can help them, that stickiness occurs. Of course, there is a third area of this that we need to always remember with training, is that the trainers involved, the delegates involved, and the sales manager has got to be involved. There are a lot of sales managers out there who naively believe that training is the sticking plaster that will cure all. And it actually isn't. You've got to take that training. You've got to then look at what those individuals are going to commit to, and then set KRAs around those things and then measure them on it. Because if the manager doesn't do their bit, then ultimately they will then say, predictably, that the training didn't work. Well, the reality is the training does work at different levels for different people, and not everyone's going to take away the same thing. We often hear that people say sales training is going to increase revenue. Well, not initially, it's not. If you're going to have an effective trainer in your business, if you just want them to train your business and close deals and get that business in really quickly, you're on a dangerous route there to the hard sell, where people are just commodity selling and they're just getting rid of stuff.
Right.
And that means that you're not necessarily going to get customers come back to you again and again because they won't feel cared for. So what we must think about is how we actually develop people to have, one, better quality conversations, to two, increase the level of trust between the salesperson and the client, and three, the sales will then naturally evolve from there. So managing expectations across a business, we look for there to be a period of adjustment, effective management all the way through it. And then the clients can feel that difference as well. And believe me, clients can definitely feel when somebody genuinely cares about their business and that they want to be involved with that business. You
Right.
can hear people coming up with those, those kind of rubbishy excuses for not doing business with you. It's the wrong time of year. We've got no budget. We won't risk anything further. You can hear those kind of veiled excuses. But sometimes when people are genuinely interested in working with you, they come up with real reasons why they can't work with you that you can explore and then hopefully overcome. And people won't object to you if they don't want to do business with you. They wouldn't bother. They just walk away. They just say, bugger off, we don't want to deal with you anymore. And then they just walk away. People don't put up a fight unless they want something back in return. So there's a lot of effort involved in sales objections, and we have to make sure we cover that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, the goal at the end of the day, I think, for a sales trainer such as yourself and you're training people and organizations isn't to have Simon there for 10 years. It's for you to train them so that they can enable themselves and create their own sales managers and their sales team to do what they need to do without you at some point.
Anyway, it's like making yourself redundant, isn't it? That's your ultimate aim. You want to be able to get them to a stage. But of course, there is a darker side to that as well, John, and that is that if you get people to a stage where they don't need you anymore, there is a chance that they'll just carry on. And if we go back to the sharpening the knife thing,
Right.
salespeople are then going to be doing the same things over and over again. And just like a knife, it does the same thing over and over again, and eventually it becomes blunt.
Right.
So therefore, there is nothing more dangerous than a blunt knife. And there's nothing more dangerous in the business world than a blunt, untrained salesperson.
Yeah.
Release those on the business world, and suddenly our name as salespeople is about to go through the mud.
That's right. Yeah, I guess from a complacency standpoint, you have to consider that as well. What's if I said, Simon, when you go into an organization, what are the top things that you see right away typically that you're like, well, I need to hone in here, or I can tell that this is where I'm going to be spending a lot of time?
I'd see the first thing I see is people have a fear of talking about money. I see that a lot. They're frightened of talking about cost and budget. And they feel it's almost rude to talk about budget, and they don't like doing that. Another thing we're finding as well, and I know you've seen this on LinkedIn a million times, is where people are saying that cold calling is dead. So therefore, people have this fear of cold calling that they don't want to do that. And so therefore, the third thing that we see a problem with is people hiding behind email. And these are kind of three common factors across business that we notice. And we often look into our deep and dark past as to why people behave this way. If we think about people that are frightened of talking about money, or reticent of bringing up the torrid subject of coin, we can often look back and see that as children, they were probably taught not to ask how much something costs, or that it's vulgar to talk about money. So therefore, if you're brought up with that limiting belief, the chances are you'll carry that on if you go into the sales world, and you won't talk about money. So then guess what the objection is that you can't get over? Money. And why? Because you didn't ask the question in the first place. If we think about the key subject areas that we need to be talking about with clients, aims and objectives, seasonality, regionality, budget, those types of things, and product, if you don't cover each of those areas in detail, that's probably where your objection is going to come from. It's not rocket science, it really isn't. And often salespeople forget that the area they didn't choose to question a client around is the very area where their objection is going to come from. And usually budget is one of them. And if we stick with those limiting beliefs as well that we have, we know that salespeople hate rejection. We are a very passionate group of people. We're very effervescent. We make a lot of noise, all of those things. And we like to be loved and liked. We like that recognition. So it goes without saying that we hate rejection. So when we were kids, some people as kids are taught not to talk to strangers, because ultimately there is a danger in talking to strangers. If you have that belief when you're brought up as a kid, when you go into the sales world, that stranger danger, if you will, translates itself into someone that won't cold call. They won't pick up the phone and talk to strangers. And why? Because they fear being hurt. And the hurt that translates into sales is rejection. And it's why we find that a lot of salespeople actually give up calling a client after the first contact if that client has said no. It's experienced salespeople that are like you and I that know that the word no doesn't mean never, it means not now.
Right.
And we know that a client is going to say no on average around about 7 times before they say yes anyway. So therefore, we've got to make sure that we're trying to overcome those limiting beliefs so that we can actually talk to our clients on an equal footing. And whilst I'm on that, of an equal footing, there's another limiting belief we're taught as a child as well. And that limiting belief is that you should never answer back or cheek your elders. So that what happens is we take that, because we stay quiet and demure as children and we're very, very polite, we don't answer back. And guess what? You go into the world of business as a salesperson and you don't answer back. Guess what? You don't answer back when the client gives you an objection. Those people are traditionally not very good at handling objections and shy away from it. And this one has another level as well, because you're taught to respect your elders. You find that people who work in sales who have that belief tend to hold back from calling large organizations or people who have the word director or head of in their job title, because they feel that those people are more important than they are. Why would I want to talk to that person in that giant organization? Why would they want to talk to little old me? And by belittling yourself, you belittle your value. And we find that those types of salespeople usually bring in the short-term sales, the smaller sales, the smaller clients. And whilst those little clients can grow into big trees from little acorns, of course, if you're running a business where you're just going after small names, well, you're not going to scale and grow too too quick. So therefore, you want people who are not frightened to talk to large organizations and go in there and demonstrate their value of what they can do. Because ultimately, all businesses just want to make money. And so therefore, what we have to do is help our clients make money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Isn't it? I mean, I was talking to an author yesterday. His name is Jim Irving. He wrote the Business to Business guidebook, and it's a really, really great book. But when he talks about people and why people buy, he says that people buy for three reasons. Number one is to make money. Number two is to save money. And number three is to reduce their risk. And I kind of agree with all three of those. There's other psychological reasons why as well, linked with ego and prestige and safety and all of those things. But if you think about the reasons why people go into business, it is, isn't it? We go into business because we want to make money. Self-employed people or business owners work 80 hours a week, so we don't have to work 39 hours a week. That's the whole reason we do it and break ourselves working so hard. So therefore, we want to make sure that every time we talk to a client, our view is, I'm going to help you make money. I'm going to help you save money. I'm going to help you reduce your risk. Right. So it's just a better way of thinking of things. And ultimately, as a salesperson, I'm quite controversial in what I tell salespeople, because I often tell them to forget their sales targets. And what I say to them is, if you forget your sales targets, then what will happen is you will focus on trying to help your client make more money. If you're great at that, then what will happen? Your client will help you make money without even thinking about it. And guess what? Your target will come in, because your focus is on how you help that business make money, save money, or reduce their risk. And every product or service that's out there will fit into one of those three categories. It's a really straightforward process.
Wow,
that's simple, John. I really do.
Yeah, that is simple, but it's powerful. Now, one interesting question is, you do a lot of international training. Do you have to adjust your approach in different countries or different parts of the world, or does that stay kind of pretty much the same?
Okay, so sales is sales at the end of the day. It's a case of, let me find out about you and let me show you how I can help you. That's the process, and it's done in that order. Of course, you've got personality differences. So when you're dealing with people in certain European countries, for example, they tend not to be too fluffy. They don't like too much of the emotional rapport building. They just want to cut straight to the chase. So in some countries, you find that going on. In other countries, there's a lot of fluff and a lot of talk. So when I'm training people in the UK, we do tend to talk about building rapport with people. That's important. In the USA, there's a lot of talk. There's a lot of that rapport building. And what we sometimes find with some people in the USA is they talk at a very high level, but it's quite difficult for them to substantiate what's going on underneath in a very succinct way. So what we do is we encourage all of that confidence, but what we do is we put that substantiation in that process underneath so that they can always back up what they're saying and get to where they want to go a lot quicker. Okay. So when we're dealing with different people all over the world, you have to always consider cultural fit as well. So if you were selling in Dubai, for example, there would be a different way that you would approach customers and deal with people. In Australia, you might deal with things differently there. But ultimately, sales process is the same. It's just about cultural fit.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. The culture piece of it, I know it's got to be huge. I mean, what's your thought process and your advice for sales professionals out there from a personal branding standpoint? And, I know that's probably a whole episode in itself, but, what are your thoughts on that personal branding and, hey, they need to be engaged or they don't need to be engaged? How do you teach to that?
Well, when we talk about personal branding, it's about how you put yourself out there. It's what people see. It's that fantastic, energetic, facade, if you will, that people buy into. It's the packaging, it's all of that stuff. It's made up of your beliefs and your values and the artifacts, the things that people can see about you. And it's about making sure that you're very consistent in your messaging and very timely in your messaging as well. So for example, if you're going down a personal branding route on social media, it's about making sure that you're quite consistent in your approach, that you're using video as much as possible, and that you're using certain strap lines about yourself or your business so that you plant those seeds in the buyer's mind. So if you work for one particular company, whenever you put a post up, you should always mention the name of the company that you work for and mention your name as well. And if you've got a strap line to that company, we'll mention that as well. Whenever I put posts onto LinkedIn, I always make sure that in any written post, I always end by saying Serial Trainer 7 is your next click. It's on every post, not on comments, but just on a post. And that means because it's the last thing people see, it reminds them of who they've just read. When I talk to the camera, I always end by saying, I'm Simon Hares, Serial Trainer 7, training that gets you there faster and leaves you there better. So it gives people a benefit as to why they should listen to me and why they should talk to me. And it sticks in people's minds. When that bit of personal branding starts getting quoted back to you by the people you come into contact with, then you know you've got something special. But personal branding goes a bit deeper as well. It also goes around on kind of color as well, and style and tone and what you look like, sometimes the way you dress. Whenever I'm in front of a camera, I always try to wear a color like this, because these are the Serial Trainer 7 colors, so that you're always on brand. Not all the time, but as much as possible, we try to do that. So it's about having that consistency of message, and that's delivered through visual clues, through your personal beliefs, your personal values. The other thing I think is very important with personal branding is to give credit to other people as well. That it's not just about you. It's actually about, know your wider market, know the wider thing. I love reading around lots of different people, and I love to quote people who have really, made a difference to me. So therefore, if you pass that credit on and you get known for doing that, that's a really nice piece of branding for yourself and something that you get known for. And I genuinely believe you should always give more than you'll ever receive anyway. It's that whole thing on servant leadership, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Relevant or different? If I said, Simon, I ask you, Simon, your Serial Trainer 7, is your goal to be relevant or different? And where's the biggest impact?
Okay, so for me, every time it's not different, because everybody is different. Every company out there, everybody says the D word. Every time I hear the word different from a salesperson, I hear dross. Right. And let me tell you why. When somebody tells you that they're different, what they'll do is they'll usually give you some BS bloody benefit that they think they do, which changes the world, when the reality is they haven't really researched their market, and it's what everybody does. So therefore, it's not different at all. When I'm asked by clients, what makes you different? I say nothing. Sales training is sales training.
Right.
And I've had clients who said, so why are you sitting in front of me right now? And I'll say, I'll tell you why I'm sitting in front of you right now. Because I'm a salesperson, because I sell every single day, and because I feel the pain that your people feel every day. I've been through the same crap that your people have been through. It's a roller coaster ride. One day, everything you touch in sales turns to gold. And then for a week afterwards, everything you touch turns to shit. And that's the reality of it. That is the truth of it. That's how we feel as salespeople. We question our very being. And yet, when we're really high, we're really high. So when you say that to a client, suddenly you are more relatable, you're more relevant. And relevance is more important to me, because if you can be relevant, then I can relate to you. If I can relate to you, then I know my people can relate to you. Therefore, you fit with my business. So I've seen lots of companies out there that do things which are supposed to be different. Well, they're not that different at all, actually. It's the same. But when they start to be relevant and it starts to be calibrated and refined to that individual client, that's where something special happens. So it's a long answer, but I will say to you, it's always relevance over difference every single time. So relevance actually can differentiate you in a really, really strong way. But it's really important that when you talk about it, that you back it up and you substantiate it as well. A few years ago, a book came out called The Insight Sale by Schultz and Doerr, and they talked about 3 things you do to a client: resonate, differentiate, substantiate. And if you differentiate and resonate with people and connect with people, but you don't back up your claims, you create risk. So therefore, if you can back up what you're saying, then that has a massive effect on the way people perceive you. So what we always do is we always have a testimonial strategy in the business. And that means that every time we deliver training, we make sure we get testimonials on that piece of training. And those are posted on LinkedIn. And they're always in the same place. So within my own personal profile, there are 238 individual testimonials from clients and delegates, so that I can say to my clients who I'm pitching, don't take my word for it. Have a read of what they've said. And if you want to contact them, go ahead and do it. You'd be amazed how the conversion goes up because you've allowed people to do that. So if you can substantiate what you're saying, that makes you more relevant. And that's so important.
I like what Jeffrey Gitmer says about that. He says that if you say it, it's bragging. If somebody else says it, that's proof.
Yeah.
Which goes back to the relevance.
Yeah, it really does. And it's funny. I don't mind salespeople that brag a little bit. I really don't mind that. I've often, I'll brag. I don't mind. I'll do that. I'm proud of what I do. I'm really proud of what I do.
Yeah.
If you just said to me 10 years ago, Simon, you're going to be running a company, I'd be sat there going, no, I'm not. I'm very happy where I am. Thank you. But now that I've done it, I wouldn't look back, and I'm really proud of it. And we should be proud of it. We're taught, aren't we, so much all the time to be polite, have a bit of humility. But you know what? When you run a company and you do it initially on your own, it can be really lonely being successful, and you want someone to share your successes with. And there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you can substantiate them and back them up. It doesn't make you vulgar. It doesn't make you unpleasant. It doesn't make you any less nice. It just means you want to share your successes. Because after all, we live in a really negative world where people will jump on the nearest negative thing that's out there. So, why not have a bit of good news? We need it. We love it. And it's inspirational to other people. If you think about what motivates and drives people, it's the sharing of good news and inspiration that says, it's not impossible, it's I'm possible. I can do that. So let's all have a go. That's what it's all about. I love it.
Absolutely. How about if I said, Simon, what are going to be the keys in the sales training, or let's just generalize it and say the sales profession going forward in the current environment we're in? With the COVID-19 pandemic and kind of the tools and skills that a sales professional is going to need going forward. Like you said earlier, the basics are always going to be there, but going forward, what's it going to look like, do you think?
Well, there's so much that's posted at the moment about the way that we sell on here. And I posted something about 3 or 4 weeks ago, where I'd actually got to a stage, John, where I was a bit pissed off with people telling me how I should sell, because the way that I was being told how to sell wasn't exactly the way I wanted to sell, or wasn't right. And I came to the conclusion that right now we don't know how to sell. No, anyone who is going through this has never been through this before. We weren't around when the Spanish flu stuff went round. We weren't here then. We didn't know. Sales was different then. So we didn't know how to sell. And right now, if people are really honest, we're just making it up. We really are. We're making it up. We're sat here going, how in hell do I talk to somebody when I actually can't even get through to them because they're working from home, and I even can't get through to them because when I ring their office number, they haven't even got the technology to divert it round to their home. So it's hard for me to sell, but that doesn't mean we have to give up. So here's what I think. I think within the future, what we need to start doing a lot more is predicting behavior. We need to start thinking like our clients a bit more. So right now, I've been working on some stuff on sales objections, and you might have, I'm sure that you and everyone else has heard of the challenger sale, where we had a look at the different types of salesperson, but they also followed up with the challenger customer. Now, I looked at the challenger customer, and I've come up with a number of different client types that would come out of the COVID-19 crisis. So one of them, for example, is the opportunist. This is the person who is definitely going to want to do business with you, but they're going to screw you on price because they're going to think that you're going to be desperate for the business. Another one is the runner. This is the person who wants to cancel everything and get the hell out of Dodge because they just want to shore up their money. Now, if you know in advance that you're going to be coming up against these types of people, then it's much easier for you to predict your own behavior of how you're going to deal with them. So what I do is I tend to use a technique for handling the objections that they're going to give you and preempt those objections. And if we can preempt them and listen out for them, we are anticipating that behavior. In which case, when we use techniques like, oh, I understand how you feel because other people I've spoken to have felt the same way. And what they found is by doing this, using those tried and tested techniques, they really come to life. Why? Because you have predicted and anticipated correctly behaviors of people. And I've got a tear sheet that people can have of the types of client you're going to meet as a result of the COVID crisis. And I just think it's all about predictability and anticipation. It's about thinking a little bit further down the line. And I also believe that the way forward now is to use video for talking to clients. And anyone that's been on any of my training courses in the last 6 years, I have been banging the drum. I mean, not just banging that drum, I've been beating the crap out of this drum to say, as long as you've got FaceTime on your phone, when you go to call a client, if it gives you the option to FaceTime or WhatsApp, then do that on video. Because if you start using video, you're going to save your client a ton of time in waiting for you to come to their office. It disrupts their day. So it also saves your company travel money, which they can then use to pay you more money or to give you better incentives and commission. So therefore, it's in your best interest to use all of this video technology to connect with your clients. When I started the business, there was no way I could travel all over the world to go and see people just for a meeting. So I engaged with it straight away, and it really works. And they love it because they can see you, you can read them, all right, not as well as you can when you're in the room with them, but you can see them as I can see you right now. And, you know, it accelerates that sales journey for them, and that sales process becomes a bit shorter. So I think, in a nutshell, it's about predictability, it's about anticipation, and it's about using video technology a lot more moving forward.
Yeah, those are three big things. I think you're right on. It's interesting about the predicting the customer behaviors. That's pretty cool. But I think that's where it's going. I mean, it's kind of an AI type of look at it.
I think it is. And, you know, when we read things like the Challenger sale, I mean, the number of people that were out there that would probably have looked at that book and gone, I was the relationship builder, I'm a problem solver. Well, I tell you now, I remember reading that book, and for years and years and years, I was told it was all about relationships, and you've got to build on relationships. It was all about that. And you know what? That kind of wasn't me. It wasn't really the way that I sold. I sold in a slightly different way. I was more demonstrative with my clients. I would almost tell them what they needed to be doing because I had knowledge of the market. I had insight on the market. So why would I waste that and not tell them what I knew and share relevant stuff and back it up? So I was always more of the lone wolf challenger type of person. I was quite difficult to manage. So therefore I fitted into that. So the minute I read that, it was like someone had just, you know, rang a bell in my ear. It was fantastic. Yeah. So of course I thought, well, I can't be the only one. And then when you talk about this to people in sales courses, they're just looking at you like, you know, it's manna from heaven. They think it's wonderful because now they realize they don't have a one size fits all approach to selling. They can be whoever they want to be. And that's really important. But if we know that we can change our behavior, that means we can anticipate buyer behavior. And if we start to see patterns in different clients, like this person is kind of, as they call it, the go-getter, or this person is the friend or the cynic, you know, you start to predict behavior and you can use your CRM to much greater effect in targeting people. But as sales managers and directors, we can then make sure that we are aligning the right salespeople to the right type of clients. Because so many times, you see in business, and I'm sure you've seen this as well, where one person is trying to reach a contact, they can't get through to them, and when they do, they can't connect with them in any way. And then what happens is someone else in the team has the insight to say, why don't I call them for you, see how I get on? And guess what? They call them and they get the business, or they get a meeting, or they get the next steps. And you think, why are we not doing that a lot more? Why are sales managers so set on giving people a CRM, a database, where they go, right, what we're going to do is you're going to deal with all clients who have a turnover of over $1 million a year. You're going to deal with clients whose names end, your names alphabetically are A to E. Why would we do that? Why don't we be a bit more scientific about it and start thinking, this is the type of personality in that business. We've got this type of personality in our business. These two need to get together. Yeah?
Yeah.
Or maybe this person responds to these types of behaviors. One person in my business doesn't have it, but these two people together, if they go out together and they dual call it, actually 1 + 1 could equal 3. And then you get a much better, outcome. It just baffles me why people don't think a little bit more about the personality of the person they're dealing with, rather than everything being from their side. You see, if you start thinking like the buyer a lot more, they'll just help you make money without even thinking about it. It goes back to my earlier point. It really does. And as I said, it's not hard. You just have to think a little bit outside your own square office or your own back door,
Yeah, no, those are great points. Thinking like the buyer, that's huge.
Well,
I,
remember that people, what's the old adage? People buy people, right? People buy people who they trust, they like, and they believe in, and people buy from people who will help make them money rather than just take money off of them. So in order to understand that, you've got to think like a buyer. I was taught that years ago, and you know what? It's stuck with me ever since. Whenever I'm selling training, who do I think like? I think like an HR director, because that HR director is going to have to performance manage that person into a promotion because they've done so well, or out because they're rubbish and they need to be removed from the business. That's not thinking like the sales manager. That's thinking about the person who's going to have to handle the processes behind the scenes. So when you start to think that wide, and you start thinking about the implications, you get buy-in from multiple points within the business. And when I sell training, if you were a sales director, it may be that you want me to do the training, but it may be that your budget is held by human resources or your finance director. So if I can start making sure that I've got you happy and I've got them happy, well, I've got two contacts in the business who love me. And that's really important because they might have training in other areas of their business, like management, that they might want me to come in and do. So the message here is that whenever you're selling to an individual, try and make sure you're selling as well to other key stakeholders in the business. The more contacts you have in one organization, the more opportunities there are to leverage different types of sale. And remember, in a lot of organization, you have things like pre-sales, you have people like sales introducers, you have the new business generators, you have the account managers. And often each of those have a department head. So they're going to need training. So get involved with as many people as you can. Those touch points in the business mean you get a much richer, rounder sales experience, and you can really make a difference to that organization.
Yeah, absolutely. I got one more question for you, but before we answer that question, what I want you to do is tell all the listeners how they can get in touch with you. What's the best place to get in touch with Serial Trainer 7 and to get in touch with Simon?
Okay, so if you want to get in touch with me, and I would love to hear from you, then the way to do it is to get through to me you can go to my website, which is serialtrainer7.com. Alternatively, you can email me, simon@serialtrainer7.com. It's nice and easy. Or through LinkedIn, Simon Hares or Serial Trainer 7. Do you notice the thread here? I've said it 3 times. What was it that Grant Cardone told us? We don't buy the best products, we buy the best known products. And if you've got the best and the best known, well, that's just great. I think I've got both. So at the end of the day, have a read of the testimonials, come and talk to me. And I won't deliver an off-the-shelf solution to you. I want to be able to really understand the business and the individuals that we've got so that we can really curate, if that's not too big a word, a solution that will deliver for people. And that's really what it's all about. So that's how they can contact me.
All right. So you heard it. That's how you get a hold of him. That's how you get to experience all those sales vitamins. But go to the website, connect with him on LinkedIn for sure. So my last question, Simon, is you've got one sales vitamin to give. Let's say you're at a training seminar and they say you've got one sales vitamin that you can give to help our sales team. What is that one vitamin that you give?
That one vitamin that I'm going to give you is always remember that your job as a salesperson is to make your client money. That's your job. Nothing else. Nothing else matters. If you can show your client that you're going to make them money and your product or service can do that, then great. If it can't necessarily make them money, but it can save them money, let's just say you're a salesperson working in a recruitment agency. You can save a client money by giving quality candidates that will reduce their turnover and improve their retention, therefore saving them money. If you can't do either of those two, you potentially could reduce risk. And if you can reduce the risk to that business by making things easy for them, or you have a simplified process, or you are faster at what you do, not necessarily cheaper, because people don't always buy on price. If it's about making things convenient for people and easier, and you can reduce their risk by substantiating what you say, then they'll buy from you as well. But ultimately, it's about money. Always remember, why does this business run its business? It's there to make money. It's viable there. So that's what we have to do. So that's my vitamin for them. Is it comes in just one form, always make money, but it has a couple. It's like vitamin B1, make money. Vitamin B2, vitamin B2, save money. Vitamin B3, reduce risk. And I don't know why I said vitamin B, because actually as salespeople we're A class. So it's A1, A2, A3. That's it. I was just thinking of both there.
Awesome. That's a good, that's a jar full of vitamins. So that's awesome.
It is.
Well,
it is. It's overflowing.
That's right. Well, hey, I appreciate you being on today. And I know that when the listeners hear this, they're going to get a ton of great value and a great sales vitamins. And thank you for coming on. Thank you for everything you do, and just acknowledge you for all the work you do in the sales industry and the way you help people. I know everybody appreciates that. So thank you for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me on the show today. I've really, really appreciated it. And, you know, if any of the people who are watching this want to get in touch, even if they just have a question or they just want some support with something, feel free to just get in touch. You can direct message me on LinkedIn. If you're going to use the LinkedIn video function, use that, because that's amazing. And I'm just going to give this as a little added vitamin. Have I got time just to give you one more little vitamin?
Absolutely.
Just one more. What I want you to do, everyone, is when you're on LinkedIn, I put this up the other day. When you're on LinkedIn, if you go into the messaging center of LinkedIn and you go to send somebody a message, notice next to the message at the bottom, the little plus sign. If you click on that plus sign, you've got 6 options, and one of them is video. If you press video on there and you turn the camera around to face you, you can then create a personalized video to that prospect, telling them exactly who you are, so you can do your short elevator pitch. But if you want to build a really good following on LinkedIn, then send messages to say thank you for the connection or why you want to connect. And people will delete text no end, especially if it contains that LinkedIn language, you know, reaching out, touching base, all of that rubbish.
Right.
You know what I mean? If you're actually going to send something that says to somebody, "Hi, John, thanks so much for having me on the Sales Vitamin podcast. Really looking forward to getting involved with that. Please send me any information I'm going to need beforehand. That would be terrific. And thanks again." Something like that, that's really memorable, and that's going to stick. That's stickiness again. So that little tip on there, it's free to use. And if you're not comfortable talking to camera, because you might think I've got more of a face for radio, not everyone has, but there we are, then maybe you want to use the audio version, which is where you do a voice message.
Yeah.
Once you actually discover this and you start to see the traction that it will build up, it's an amazing thing. And we'll call that not a sales vitamin, we'll call that a sales supplement, because it supplements what you're going to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
You won't find that in GNC.
That's right.
You'll find that in Serial Trainer 7.
That's right. Hey, that's a great extra tip, and that is an awesome function. So, hey, thank you for being on today, and I look forward to everybody hearing this episode.
Thank you so much. Thank you.